The great hall of the Galactic Council was full of worried voices. Representatives from 43 different species sat around the massive circular table, their alien forms creating a strange rainbow of colors and shapes. Some had fur, others had scales. Some breathed oxygen, others needed special masks. But today, they all shared the same fear. Admiral Zektar stood at the center of the room. His blue skin was darker than usual, a sign of stress among his people. His forearms moved as he spoke, pointing to the giant holographic display that floated above the table. The display showed a map of their galaxy, with thousands of stars marked in different colors. But there was one area that was completely black. "Council members," Zektar said, his voice carrying to every corner of the hall. "We must talk about the silent sector." The room became quiet. Everyone knew about the silent sector, but no one wanted to think about it. 3 years ago, that part of space had been full of life. 4 different alien species lived there, calling themselves the Hegemony Coalition. They had been strong, aggressive, and growing larger every day. Their ships had been seen near the borders of peaceful worlds, always watching, always ready for war. Then, one day, everything stopped. The Coalition had over 50 worlds, Zektar continued. They had millions of ships, billions of people. Their technology was advanced. Their armies were strong. But now, he gestured to the black area on the map, nothing, no radio signals, no energy readings, no life signs. It is as if they never existed. A delegate from the Centauri Federation raised her hand. She looked like a tall, thin human, but with silver skin that sparkled under the lights. "Admiral, what do your scouts report?" Zektar's expression became even more serious. "We have sent 12 scout missions to the edge of the silent sector. Only 8 came back. Those that returned found empty space where cities used to be, planets with no life. Space stations drifting without power, and something else." He touched a control and the display changed. Now it showed recordings from the scout ships. The images were disturbing. Massive warships floated dead in space, their hulls torn open like metal flowers. Space stations that had once housed millions were now cold and dark. Even the planets looked wrong, their surfaces scarred and empty. "Whatever happened there," Zektar said, "it was fast and complete. Our best scientists believe it took less than 10 standard days." A creature that looked like a walking tree spoke up. His voice was like wind through leaves. "Could it have been a plague? Some kind of disease?" "We thought so too," Zektar replied. "But diseases do not destroy machines. They do not tear apart starships or drain power from reactors. This was something else." "War?" asked another delegate, this one resembling a giant insect with rainbow wings. "War with whom?" Zektar spread his forearms wide. "The Coalition was the strongest military force in that region. They had been preparing for a massive expansion. Our intelligence suggested they were about to launch attacks on 17 different systems. Who could have stopped them?" The room filled with nervous whispers. The Hegemony Coalition had been feared throughout the galaxy. They were known for their brutal tactics and advanced weapons. If something could destroy them so completely, what did that mean for everyone else? "Perhaps they destroyed themselves," suggested a delegate who looked like a floating jellyfish. "Internal conflict, civil war," Zektar shook his head. "Our analysis shows no signs of internal fighting. The destruction was systematic, precise. It came from outside. But from where?" The question came from Ambassador Creanel, a respected leader whose people had been fighting the Coalition for decades. "We monitor all the nearby systems. No one has that kind of power. That is what we are here to discuss," Zektar said. "The silent sector threatens the balance of our galaxy. We need to know what happened there. We need to prepare for whatever force could do this." As he spoke, a soft chime filled the room. A junior officer ran to Zektar and whispered something in his ear. The Admiral's blue skin went even darker. "What is it?" asked Ambassador Creanel. Zektar looked up at the assembly. "Our long-range sensors have detected something. A single ship is approaching from the silent sector." The room erupted in shouts and questions, but Zektar raised his hands for quiet. The ship is small, roughly the size of a coalition destroyer, but its design— He paused, looking confused. Its design matches nothing in our databases. The energy signature is unknown. The materials appear to be both primitive and incredibly advanced at the same time. Is it hostile? Someone called out, "We do not know. It is not responding to our standard communication frequencies. But it is moving slowly, as if it wants to be seen." Ambassador Crianel stood up. Her people had the best military minds in the council. "Admiral, I recommend we mobilize the defense fleet immediately. Whatever destroyed the coalition might be coming for us." Many voices agreed, but Zektar held up a hand. "Wait, the ship is transmitting something." He activated the communication system, and suddenly a voice filled the great hall. It was speaking in perfect galactic standard, the common language used by all council members. But there was something different about it. The accent was strange, unlike anything they had heard before. "This is Captain Elena Vasquez of the TCS JÖRMUNGANDR. We are human. We need to talk." The silence that followed was complete. No one moved. No one breathed. In all their records, in all their histories, there was no mention of a species called human. Zektar was the first to recover. "Unknown vessel, this is Admiral Zektar of the Galactic Council Defense Fleet. Please state your origin and intentions." The voice came back immediately. "Admiral, we come from a world called Earth. We received distress signals from what you call the silent sector. We came to help, but we arrived too late. We need to tell you what we found there." Ambassador Crianel whispered to her aide, who quickly consulted their computer. The aide shook her head. No record of Earth in any database. "Captain Vasquez," Zektar said carefully, "our records show no knowledge of your species or your homeworld. How did you travel so far? How did you learn our language?" There was a pause before the human captain answered. "Admiral, we have been listening to your communications for a long time. We know your languages, your cultures, your conflicts. We have been watching, but this is the first time we felt we had to act." The implications of those words sent a chill through the assembly. This unknown species had been observing them without their knowledge. How long? How many of them were there? What did they want? "Captain," said Ambassador Crianel, "you say you came to help the coalition. Why? They were not known for being peaceful." Another pause. "Ambassador, we did not come to help the coalition. We came because we detected preparations for a massive military campaign. The coalition was about to launch an attack that would have killed billions of innocent people across 17 systems. We came to stop them." The room erupted again. Delegates shouted questions and accusations. Some demanded the human ship be destroyed immediately. Others wanted to know more about these watchers who had been hidden among the stars. Zektar struggled to restore order. When the room finally quieted, he asked the question that everyone was thinking, "Captain Vasquez, what happened to the Hegemony Coalition?" The answer came without hesitation, spoken in a calm, matter-of-fact tone that made it even more terrifying. "We stopped them." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. A single ship from an unknown species claimed to have destroyed the most powerful military force in the galaxy. It was impossible. It was unthinkable. It was terrifying. How? The question came from several delegates at once. "That," said Captain Vasquez, "is what we need to discuss. Admiral, with your permission, I would like to dock at one of your stations. This conversation should happen face to face." Zektar looked around the room. He saw fear in every alien face. These beings represented the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy, and they were all afraid of a single ship crewed by an unknown species, but they needed answers. The silent sector was a mystery that could threaten them all. If these humans had those answers, the Council had to hear them. "Very well, Captain. You may dock at Station Epsilon 7. You will be met by a diplomatic team under heavy guard. Understood, Admiral and Admiral? Thank you for listening. Not everyone would have." The communication ended, leaving the great hall in stunned silence. Through the massive windows, they could see the human ship approaching. It was sleek and dark, with lines that seemed both elegant and predatory. As it moved closer, their sensors revealed more details that made no sense. Parts of the ship appeared to be made from materials that should not exist. Its weapon systems were unlike anything in their databases. Its engines produced energy readings that violated several laws of physics. Admiral Zektar stared at the approaching vessel and wondered what they had invited into their space. The coalition had been a known threat, aggressive, but predictable. These humans were something else entirely. They had watched the galaxy in secret. They had acted without asking permission. They had eliminated an entire civilization in days. "Admiral," whispered his aide, "what if they decide we are a threat too?" Zektar did not answer. He was thinking about the captain's words. Not everyone would have listened. It sounded like a warning. Or maybe a promise. As the human ship docked with Station Epsilon 7, the Galactic Council prepared to meet the species that had just announced itself by erasing their enemies from existence. In a few hours, they would learn the truth about the silent sector. They would discover what it meant to be watched by an unknown civilization. They would learn what humans meant when they said they needed to talk. The galaxy was about to change forever. Station Epsilon 7 had never been so busy. The space station normally served as a neutral meeting place for minor trade disputes and cultural exchanges. Now it was the center of the most important first contact in galactic history. Security teams from 6 different species patrolled the corridors. Scientists set up monitoring equipment in every room. Diplomats rehearsed their opening statements in dozens of languages. Everyone was nervous. Everyone was scared. Ambassador Creonal stood in the main docking bay, watching the airlock that connected to the human ship. Beside her were 5 other senior council members, each representing a different region of the galaxy. Behind them stood 20 armed guards, their weapons ready but not raised. They wanted to appear cautious, not hostile. "Remember," Creonal said quietly, "we know nothing about their biology, their psychology, or their intentions. Be polite but careful. Do not make any sudden movements." The airlock hissed as it opened. Everyone tensed. Hands moving closer to weapons, the first human stepped through. She was smaller than most of the aliens expected. About average height for the species they knew, with brown skin and black hair pulled back in a simple style. She wore a dark blue uniform with strange markings on the shoulders. Her face was calm, but her eyes moved constantly, taking in every detail of the room. What surprised the aliens most was how normal she looked. After seeing their impossible ship and hearing about their incredible power, they had expected something more dramatic. Instead, they saw a being that could have been mistaken for one of several known species if not for the subtle differences in bone structure and skin tone. "I am Captain Elena Vasquez," the human said, stepping forward with her. Hands visible and empty. "Thank you for agreeing to meet with us." Ambassador Creonal stepped forward as well. "I am Ambassador Creonal, speaking for the Galactic Council. Captain, we have many questions." "I'm sure you do," Vasquez replied. "I hope I can answer them." The group moved to a conference room that had been specially prepared. The table was round, with no head position, to avoid suggesting dominance. Vasquez sat down without ceremony. While the alien delegates took their places more carefully, Dr. Zeelan, the Council's chief scientist, spoke first. His species looked like purple octopi, and he gestured with several tentacles as he talked. "Captain, our sensors show that your ship contains materials and energy systems we do not recognize. Your technology appears to combine very simple components with impossibly advanced ones. Can you explain this?" Vasquez nodded. "We build our ships differently than you do. We use what works, not what looks impressive. Some of our best ideas come from very old designs. Others use principles you have not discovered yet." "Such as?" pressed Dr. Zeelan. "I am not here to share military technology," Vasquez said firmly but politely. "I am here to explain what happened in the silent sector and why it affects all of you." Ambassador Creonal leaned forward. "Captain, you said your people have been watching us for how long?" "About 400 of your standard years," Vasquez replied. "We discovered radio transmissions from your worlds when we first developed long-range detection systems. We learned your languages, studied your cultures, observed your conflicts, without making contact, noted Delegate Morthak, whose people resembled giant crystal formations. Why? Vasquez was quiet for a moment, choosing her words carefully. My people have a saying, look before you leap. We wanted to understand the galaxy before we revealed ourselves. We needed to know if you were peaceful or aggressive, whether you would welcome new friends or see us as threats to conquer. And what did you decide? Asked Crianel. That you are like us, Vasquez said. Most of you want peace. You want to build, to grow, to explore, but some of you ... She paused. Some of you want to take everything for yourselves. Dr. Zillin's tentacles writhed with interest. You mean the Hegemony Coalition? Among others, Vasquez confirmed. The coalition was not the first aggressive empire we observed, but they were the first that threatened to destroy the balance completely. What do you mean? Asked Delegate Yanara, whose bird-like features showed confusion. Vasquez activated a small device, and a holographic display appeared above the table. It showed the galaxy with different colored zones. This is how we see your galaxy. Green zones are peaceful civilizations. Yellow zones have conflicts but stay within their borders. Red zones are aggressive expansionist powers. The delegates studied the map. They could see their own worlds marked in green or yellow. The silent sector was marked in black. 3 years ago, Vasquez continued, the coalition entered what we call cascade phase. They were no longer just expanding. They were preparing to consume everything around them. Our analysis showed they would attack 17 systems within 6 months. After conquering those, they would have enough resources to attack 50 more, then 100, then ... The entire galaxy, whispered Ambassador Crianel. Eventually, yes. They had developed a philosophy that saw conquest as evolution. They believed that only the strongest deserved to survive, and they intended to prove their strength by destroying everyone else. Delegate Morthak's crystal body flashed with anger. We knew they were dangerous, but we thought they could be contained. Our defense pacts, our trade agreements, would have meant nothing, Vasquez said sadly. We monitored their secret communications. They were already planning to use your own trade routes against you. Your defense pacts would have been broken by surprise attacks on your allies. They had spent decades learning your weaknesses. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. The coalition had not just been a threat. They had been an extinction event waiting to happen. So you decided to act, said Dr. Zillin. We did, Vasquez confirmed, but not in the way you might think. We do not like war, Ambassador. We do not enjoy destruction. When we act, we try to be precise. Precise? Crianel's voice carried disbelief. Captain, the entire coalition civilization is gone. 50 worlds, billions of people. How is that precise? Vasquez met her gaze steadily. Because, Ambassador, those billions of people are not dead. The silence that followed was so complete that they could hear the station's life support systems humming in the walls. What? Several delegates said at once. The coalition military is destroyed, Vasquez explained. Their government is gone. Their war machine has been dismantled. But the civilians, the farmers, the teachers, the children, they were relocated to safe worlds under our protection. Dr. Zelena's tentacles moved frantically. Relocated, all of them? That is impossible. The logistics alone is difficult. Yes, Vasquez admitted. But not impossible if you plan carefully and act quickly. We spent 2 years preparing before we moved. We identified every civilian population center, every non-military facility, every school and hospital. When we acted, we had ships ready to evacuate them to prepared settlements on uninhabited worlds. But our scouts found empty planets, protested. Delegate Yanara. They found empty coalition worlds, Vasquez corrected. The people are safe on new worlds, learning to live without the military culture that defined their society. They are being taught new ways of thinking, new ways of living. Ambassador Crianel felt a chill run through her body. Captain, you? are describing the complete reorganization of an entire civilization. The removal of their government, their military, their culture, their aggressive culture, Vasquez emphasized. We did not destroy their art, their music, their traditions. We removed only the parts that made them a threat to others. And if they resist this reorganization? Vasquez's expression became sad. Some did resist. Those who were completely committed to the conquest philosophy, who could not accept peaceful coexistence, double quotes. They are no longer a problem. The delegates exchanged worried glances. The human spoke of mass relocation and cultural reorganization as if discussing the weather. She talked about eliminating resistance with the same calm tone. Captain, said Crianel carefully, what gives you the right to make these decisions for other species? The same right you claim when you defend yourselves against attack, Vasquez replied. The coalition was preparing to destroy billions of innocent lives. We chose to save those lives by removing the threat. But you did not ask for our help, pointed out Delegate Morthak. You did not warn us or request permission from the Council. Would you have given it? Vasquez asked. If we had revealed ourselves 3 years ago and told you we wanted to evacuate the coalition civilians and restructure their society, what would you have said? The delegates looked at each other. They all knew the answer. The Council would have spent months debating. Some members would have objected to interfering with another species' culture. Others would have demanded proof of the threat. By the time they reached a decision, the coalition's attacks would have already begun. You are right, admitted Ambassador Crianel. We would have hesitated. We would have delayed. People would have died while we debated. That is why we acted alone, Vasquez said. Sometimes when facing an extinction-level threat, there is no time for committees and votes. Sometimes someone has to make the hard choice. Dr. Zilan leaned forward. Captain, you speak of this as if it has happened before. Have you reorganized other civilizations? Vasquez nodded slowly. The coalition was the largest, but not the first. Over the past century, we have intervened 12 times to prevent conflicts that would have killed millions. Sometimes we stop wars before they start. Sometimes we remove dangerous weapons. Sometimes we relocate aggressive populations to worlds where they cannot threaten others. Without anyone knowing, whispered Delegate Yanara. Intervention works best when it appears to be natural, Vasquez explained. Wars that end because key leaders have accidents. Weapons programs that fail due to technical problems. Migration patterns that separate hostile populations. The galaxy has been more peaceful than you realize because we have been quietly removing sources of large-scale conflict. The implications were staggering. How many wars had these humans prevented? How many disasters had they averted? How many times had they changed the course of galactic history without anyone knowing? Captain, said Ambassador Crianel, you are describing a level of manipulation and control that That scares you, Vasquez finished. I understand. The idea that someone has been watching, judging, acting without your knowledge, it is terrifying, but consider the alternative. Without our interventions, how many species would still exist? How many worlds would still be inhabited? The room was quiet as each delegate imagined their own worlds burning under coalition attacks, their people enslaved or dead. What do you want from us? Asked Delegate Morthak finally. We want you to know the truth, Vasquez said. For 400 years, we have protected this galaxy from the shadows. We have prevented wars, stopped genocides, removed threats before they could grow too large. We did this quietly, hoping you would never need to know. But now we do need to know, said Crianel. Yes, the coalition was different. Their destruction could not be hidden or explained away. Too many people saw the silent sector. Too many questions were being asked. We decided it was time for first contact. Dr. Zilaness. Tentacles moved thoughtfully. What happens now? Do you expect us to accept your protection? To follow your rules? Vasquez shook her head. We expect you to continue as you have. Build your civilizations. Explore the stars, create art and music and literature. Live your lives. We will continue to watch as we always have. And if we object? Asked Ambassador Crianol. If we tell you to leave us alone? Vasquez looked at each delegate in turn. Then you will be free to face the next coalition-level threat on your own. The next species that decides conquest is evolution. The next empire that wants to burn the galaxy for resources. Are there others like the coalition out there? Asked Delegate Yanara nervously. Always, Vasquez said simply. In a galaxy this large, there are always those who believe might makes right. There are always predators looking for prey. We have identified 17 potential threats that could become as dangerous as the coalition within the next 50 years. The delegates felt the weight of that knowledge. 17 more potential coalition-level threats. 17 more civilizations that might try to conquer the galaxy. You could tell us about these threats? Suggested Dr. Zillan. We could work together to address them peacefully. Perhaps, Vasquez said. That is one of the options we are considering. Open cooperation instead of hidden protection. But it would require changes in how your council operates. It would require accepting that sometimes preventive action is necessary, even when it seems extreme. Ambassador Crianol understood what the human was really saying. The Galactic Council would have to become something new, not just a forum for discussion, but an organization capable of making hard decisions quickly. It would have to accept that sometimes, to preserve peace, they would have to make war. We need time to consider this, Crianol said finally. Of course, Vasquez replied, standing up, but do not take too long. The galaxy is not a patient place. Threats do not wait for committees to reach consensus. As the human captain prepared to leave, Delegate Morthok asked one more question. Captain, how many of you are there? How many humans? Vasquez paused at the door. Enough, she said simply, more than enough. She left the conference room, leaving the alien delegates alone with their thoughts and fears. Outside the windows, they could see her ship, sleek, dark, and full of secrets. Somewhere out there, other human ships were patrolling the galaxy, watching for threats, making decisions that affected billions of lives. The age of hidden protectors was over. The age of open cooperation or open conflict was about to begin. The second meeting took place 12 hours later. This time, Captain Vasquez was not alone. 3 other humans had joined her, a tall man with gray hair, a younger woman with scars on her hands, and someone whose gender was hard to determine, but who carried themselves like a soldier. Ambassador Crianol had also brought more delegates. The entire Galactic Council was now represented, either in person or through video links. Word had spread quickly through diplomatic channels. Everyone wanted to hear the details of what had really happened in the silent sector. Before we begin, said Captain Vasquez, I want to show you something. She activated a projection system, and suddenly the conference room filled with 3-dimensional images. The delegates found themselves standing in what looked like space itself, surrounded by stars and planets. This is the Hegemony Coalition as it existed 3 years ago, Vasquez explained. The display showed dozens of star systems connected by trade routes and patrol paths. Massive space stations orbited key worlds. Fleets of warships moved in formation between planets. Admiral Zektar, who had joined the meeting via video link, studied the display carefully. Our intelligence was never this detailed, he admitted. How did you gather this information? The tall gray-haired human stepped forward. I am Commander James Chun, Intelligence Division. Captain, may I? Vasquez nodded, and Chain began manipulating the display. We have been monitoring the coalition for 37 years, he said. We have listening posts throughout their territory. We track their communications, their ship movements, their resource allocation. We know more about them than they knew about themselves. The display zoomed in on a massive military complex orbiting a red giant star. This is Fleet Command Station Omega, Chun continued, the heart of coalition military power. From here, they coordinated the movements of over 200,000 warships. Delegate Yanara's bird-like features showed amazement. 200,000? Our estimates were half that number. Your estimates were based on ships you could see, Chung replied. The Coalition built most of their fleet in hidden shipyards and empty systems. They had been preparing for total war for over 20 years. The display changed again, showing detailed plans and charts. 6 months before our intervention, they finalized their expansion plan. Operation Harvest, they called it. The systematic conquest of everything within 50 light years of their borders. Ambassador Criano felt sick as she studied the plans. These targets, these are all peaceful worlds, research stations, agricultural colonies, art centers. Exactly, said the younger woman with scarred hands. I am Lieutenant Sarah Martinez. Tactical analysis. The Coalition did not want to fight military targets first. They wanted to eliminate sources of food, supplies, and morale. They planned to starve their enemies before attacking their armies. The display showed the timeline of the planned attacks. Wave after wave of Coalition ships would strike civilian targets throughout known space. Farms would be burned. Research facilities would be destroyed. Entire populations would be enslaved or killed. The beauty of the plan, Martinez continued, grimly, was that by the time military forces could respond, there would be nothing left to defend. The Coalition would control all resources in the region. Any resistance would face an enemy that had grown impossibly strong. Dr. Zelena's tentacles writhed with distress. This is genocide on a galactic scale. Yes, Captain Vasquez said simply. And it would have worked. Our analysis showed a 97% probability of complete Coalition victory within 5 years, so you decided to stop them, said Ambassador Crianal. How? Commander Chun manipulated the display again. Now they were looking at a detailed map of Coalition territory, but this one showed human positions. Small red dots marked locations throughout the enemy space. We spent 2 years preparing, Chun explained. We placed monitoring stations near every Coalition world. We identified key infrastructure targets. We mapped their command structure. We planned the complete dismantlement of their war machine. But there was a problem, Lieutenant Martinez added. The Coalition had over 4 billion civilians. If we simply destroyed their military, those people would be stranded on worlds that could not support them. The Coalition had built their society around conquest. Without constant expansion, their economy would collapse. The fourth human, the one who looked like a soldier, spoke for the first time. Their voice was calm but hard. I am Major Alex Rivera, Evacuation Coordinator. My job was to save the Coalition civilians from their own government. The display changed to show a complex logistics operation. Hundreds of human ships, most much larger than the JÖRMUNGANDR, positioned throughout Coalition space. We identified every civilian population center, Rivera explained. Every school, hospital, residential area, cultural site. We prepared temporary settlements on uninhabited worlds. We stockpiled food, medical supplies, housing materials. When the operation began, we were ready to evacuate 47 million people in the first wave. Ambassador Criano stared at the scale of the operation. This must have taken enormous resources. How many ships? How many people? Classified, Rivera replied simply. Captain Vasquez gestured, and the display changed again. Now they were watching actual recordings of the intervention. The images were from Coalition security cameras, ship sensors, and civilian communication networks. The operation began at 0300 Coalition Standard Time, Vasquez narrated. Simultaneous strikes on 12 key targets. The delegates watched in fascination and horror as human ships materialized throughout Coalition space. They did not come in massive fleets or with dramatic declarations of war. Instead, small groups of vessels appeared precisely where they needed to be, struck their targets with impossible accuracy, and vanished before Coalition forces could respond. Fleet Command Station Omega was the first target, Commander Chun explained. The display showed the massive station from multiple angles. Suddenly, sections of the station began to fail. Power grids went dark, weapon systems shut down. Life Support flickered. We did not destroy the station, Chun continued. We disabled it. Every critical system failed simultaneously, but the crew remained safe. They were evacuated to nearby ships and taken to processing centers. Processing centers? Asked Dr. Zillan. Major Rivera answered. Facilities were coalition military. Personnel were evaluated. We had to determine who were true believers in the conquest philosophy and who were simply following orders. Those who could be rehabilitated were relocated to civilian settlements. Those who could not. Rivera did not finish the sentence, but everyone understood. The recordings continued, showing similar strikes throughout coalition territory. Shipyards fell silent as their manufacturing systems were sabotaged. Military academies evacuated as their instructors mysteriously disappeared. Weapons depots exploded in perfectly controlled demolitions that harmed no one but destroyed everything inside. The coalition government tried to respond, Lieutenant Martinez explained. They ordered their fleets to attack human ships, but every time they moved vessels from one system, we struck targets in the systems they left undefended. The display showed coalition ships chasing shadows, always arriving too late to engage human forces. Meanwhile, civilian populations were being quietly evacuated from world after world. This is impossible, Admiral Zektar said from this video link. Your ships move as if they know exactly where coalition forces will be before they get there. We do know, Commander Chun replied. We had been monitoring their communications for decades. We knew their protocols, their command structure, their response patterns. We could predict their moves better than they could. Ambassador Creonal watched coalition worlds emptying of people while their fleets fought an enemy they could never catch. How long did this take? 7 days, Captain Vasquez said. By day 8, coalition military forces had been reduced by 90%. Their government had been captured or eliminated. Their civilian population was safely relocated. Their war machine was broken beyond repair. And the coalition leadership? Asked Delegate Morthok. The display showed recordings from what looked like government buildings and military headquarters. Coalition leaders, beings from 4 different species, all united in their belief in conquest, were being systematically captured by human special forces. Most cooperated once they understood the situation, Major Rivera explained. They were relocated to a secure facility where they received counseling and education about peaceful coexistence. Some have already been released to join civilian settlements. Some, noted Ambassador Creonal. What about the others? Rivera's expression hardened. Some were too dangerous to rehabilitate. They would have continued to plot conquest and murder even in captivity. They would have been a constant threat to the civilians we were trying to protect. The implication was clear. Those coalition leaders were dead. Dr. Zelen studied the final images. Coalition worlds stripped of their war machines, their populations relocated, their aggressive culture dismantled. Captain, what you accomplished is remarkable, but it is also terrifying. You have demonstrated the ability to dismantle any civilization you choose. Not any civilization, Captain Vasquez corrected. Only those that threaten others. We have no interest in conquering peaceful worlds or controlling trade routes. We act only when a species becomes a threat to galactic stability. But who decides what constitutes a threat? Asked Ambassador Creonal. You? Your government? Your computers? All of the above? Vasquez replied. We have spent centuries developing criteria for intervention. A species must demonstrate 3 things: the intention to commit large-scale violence against innocents, the capability to carry out such violence, and the impossibility of peaceful resolution. Commander Chun activated new displays showing the decision-making process. The coalition met all 3 criteria. They had publicly stated their intention to conquer 17 systems. They had built the military capability to do so, and our diplomatic analysis showed 0 probability of peaceful negotiation. You never tried to negotiate with them, pointed out Delegate Yanara. We did, Lieutenant Martinez replied. Not directly, but through intermediaries. 3 times over the past decade, we arranged for peaceful species to offer trade agreements that would have given the coalition everything they wanted without violence. They rejected every offer. They wanted conquest, not commerce. The display showed records of these failed negotiations. The coalition had been offered technology, resources, and territory in exchange for peace. Each time they had chosen war instead. They could not be reasoned with, Captain Vasquez said sadly. They saw negotiation as weakness. They respected only strength, so we showed them strength. Admiral Zektar leaned forward in his video display. Captain, the military precision you demonstrated, the ability to disable our most advanced enemies, so completely, it suggests your technology is far beyond ours. How far beyond? Vasquez exchanged glances with her team. Admiral, we prefer not to discuss specific capabilities, but I can tell you that we have had space travel for over 1,000 years. We have encountered many different forms of technology. We have learned from our mistakes. Mistakes? Asked Dr. Zillan. We were not always peaceful, Commander Chun admitted. Early in our history, we fought wars that nearly destroyed our own civilization. We learned the true cost of violence. We learned that the only way to survive in a hostile universe is to make it less hostile. Major Rivera added, every species we have studied eventually faces the same choice: learn to control their aggressive impulses or be controlled by them. The coalition chose the second path. We helped them choose differently. By force, said Ambassador Crionel. By necessity, Vasquez replied. Sometimes the only way to save lives is to change the circumstances that threaten them. The meeting continued for several more hours, with the humans providing detailed explanations of their intervention techniques, their decision-making processes, and their long-term goals. As the session ended, the galactic delegates were left with a new understanding of their place in the universe. They were not alone. They were not the most advanced species in the galaxy. They were being protected by guardians who operated by rules they did not fully understand, using methods they could not match for purposes they were only beginning to comprehend. The coalition was gone, transformed from conquerors into refugees learning to live in peace. But the power that had accomplished this transformation remained, watching, waiting, ready to act again if necessary. The galaxy had been saved from one threat, but it had also learned about a much larger and more mysterious one: the humans who had appointed themselves as its protectors, whether it wanted their protection or not. The third day of meetings began differently. Ambassador Crionel had spent the night reviewing everything they had learned about the humans and their intervention in the silent sector. The more she studied their methods, the more questions arose. This time, the meeting took place in a smaller, more private room. Only the senior council members were present, along with Captain Vasquez and her team. The atmosphere was tense. Everyone knew they were discussing the future of galactic civilization. Captain, Crionel began, we have had time to consider what you have told us. We appreciate that you saved billions of lives by stopping the coalition, but we need to understand something more fundamental. Yes? What gives humanity the right to make these decisions? Who appointed you as the galaxy's guardians? Captain Vasquez was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of centuries of human experience. Ambassador, let me tell you a story about my homeworld. 500 years ago, Earth was dying. We had poisoned our air and water. We had fought wars that killed millions. We had built weapons that could destroy our entire planet. We were exactly like the coalition, aggressive, destructive, convinced that might made right. She activated a display showing images of Earth's history. The delegates saw polluted cities, massive armies, nuclear explosions, and environmental devastation. We came very close to destroying ourselves, Vasquez continued, but we learned something important. We learned that in a universe full of dangerous things, the most dangerous thing is often yourself. Commander Chun stepped forward. Captain, may I share the Fermi analysis? Vasquez nodded, and Chen began displaying star charts and mathematical calculations. When we first developed interstellar communication, Chun explained. We asked an important question. Where is everyone? In a galaxy with billions of stars and trillions of planets, why were we not hearing from thousands of different civilizations? Dr. Zillan's tentacles moved with interest. We have wondered the same thing. Our galaxy should be full of intelligent life, but we have found relatively few species. Exactly. We developed a theory called the Great Filter. The idea is that there are certain evolutionary steps that are extremely difficult to pass. Most species destroy themselves before they can spread to the stars. The display showed a timeline of human development, marked with critical decision points. For humans, the Great Filter was learning to control our aggressive instincts, Chun continued. We almost failed that test. We came within hours of nuclear war several times. We nearly destroyed our planet's ecosystem. We were our own worst enemy, Lieutenant Martinez added, but we learned something valuable from almost destroying ourselves. We learned to recognize the signs of species approaching their own Great Filter. We learned to identify civilizations that are about to fail. The test, and you decided to help them pass? Asked Ambassador Crianol. We decided to help the galaxy survive, Captain Vasquez corrected. Not just individual species, but the entire community of intelligent life. Major Rivera activated new displays showing the galaxy from a human perspective. Different regions were marked with various symbols and colors. This is our threat assessment map, Rivera explained. Green areas are stable civilizations that have passed their Great Filter. They have learned to control their destructive impulses. Yellow areas are species still developing, but showing positive trends. Red areas are approaching critical decision points. The delegates studied the map with growing unease. They could see their own worlds marked in green or yellow, but there were many red zones throughout the galaxy. Black areas, Rivera continued, are species that have failed the test. They have chosen the path of unlimited aggression. They represent extinction-level threats to everyone around them. Like the Coalition, said Delegate Morthok. The Coalition was one example. But they are not unique. In our 400 years of observation, we have identified 47 species that reach the black category. 47? Dr. Zillan's tentacles writhed with shock. What happened to the other 46? 31 destroyed themselves before we could intervene, Commander Chun replied. They started wars they could not control, or they poisoned their own worlds, or they created weapons that consumed their civilizations. They passed through the Great Filter by failing it completely. And the other 15? Asked Ambassador Crianol, though she suspected she already knew the answer. We intervened, Captain Vasquez said simply. We helped them choose a different path. The room fell silent as the implications became clear. 15 entire civilizations had been reorganized by human intervention. 15 species had been judged too dangerous to continue as they were. Captain, said Crianol carefully, when you say you helped them choose a different path? We did what was necessary to preserve life, Vasquez replied. Sometimes that meant relocating aggressive populations. Sometimes it meant removing dangerous leadership. Sometimes it meant completely restructuring their society. And if they resisted? Vasquez met her gaze steadily. Resistance was usually brief. Major Rivera added more details to the display. Each intervention was different depending on the specific threat. The Kethmori Empire was dissolved when we relocated their warrior caste to isolated worlds and taught their civilians new forms of government. The Zarthak hegemony collapsed when we sabotaged their war production and created economic incentives for peaceful trade. Some interventions were more direct, Lieutenant Martinez said. The Veltar Confederation had developed biological weapons designed to kill all non-Veltar life. Their leadership believed they were destined to be the only species in the galaxy. We had to act quickly. What did you do? Asked Dr. Zillan. We introduced a virus into their computer networks that made their biological weapons target Veltar DNA instead of alien DNA, Martinez replied. Their own weapons eliminated the most aggressive members of their society within days. The surviving population learned very quickly to abandon their genocidal plans. The delegates stared at her in horror. The humans spoke of introducing deadly viruses and restructuring entire civilizations as if they were discussing routine maintenance. "Captain," said Ambassador Creonal, "you are describing acts that would be considered war crimes by our standards. The deliberate alteration of biological weapons, the forced relocation of populations, the elimination of entire leadership classes." "By your standards, yes," Vasquez agreed. "But your standards assume that all species deserve to continue existing, as they are regardless of the threat they pose to others. We have learned that this assumption is false." Commander Chun displayed new information, casualty projections, and survival statistics. "Without our interventions," Chun explained, "those 15 species would have killed an estimated 400 billion intelligent beings. They would have destroyed 43 civilizations completely. They would have turned vast regions of the galaxy into lifeless wasteland. Instead," Major Rivera added, 12 of those 15 species still exist as peaceful members of the galactic community. They have new governments, new cultures, new philosophies. Their populations are smaller but stable. They no longer threaten anyone." "And the other 3?" asked Delegate Yanara. "Could not be saved," Captain Vasquez said sadly. "They were too committed to their destructive path. Every attempt at rehabilitation failed. Every peaceful solution was rejected. In the end, we had to choose between them and their intended victims." "You destroyed them completely," Creonal said. "It was not a question. We made sure they could never threaten anyone again," Vasquez confirmed. "It was not a decision we made lightly. But when a species dedicates itself to the elimination of all other life, there comes a point where tolerance becomes complicity." Dr. Zealand studied the human threat assessment map more carefully. "Captain, this map shows several red zones near our current borders. Are these species we should be concerned about?" "You should be very concerned," Lieutenant Martinez replied. "The Corvani Imperium is currently developing weapons that could sterilize entire solar systems. The Thektar Collective is planning to enslave every non-Thektar species they encounter. The Nexhari dynasty believes that consuming other intelligent species will make them evolutionarily superior." The delegates felt a chill as they realized how many threats surrounded them. "Without human intervention, any one of these species could become the next coalition." "Why are you telling us this?" asked Delegate Morthak. "If you have been protecting the galaxy in secret for centuries, why reveal yourselves now?" Captain Vasquez exchanged glances with her team before answering. "Because the galaxy is changing. The threats are becoming more numerous and more sophisticated. We cannot handle them all alone anymore." "You need help?" Ambassador Creonal realized. "We need partners," Vasquez corrected. "Species that understand the reality of galactic survival. Civilizations that are willing to make hard choices to preserve life." Commander Chun displayed new projections showing future threat scenarios. "Our analysis indicates that within 50 years, the galaxy will face at least 17 coalition-level threats simultaneously. Some may even cooperate with each other. We cannot intervene against all of them while maintaining the secrecy that has made our methods effective." "So you want to bring us into your organization?" asked Dr. Zilan. "We want to create a new kind of galactic community," Captain Vasquez replied. "One that actively prevents threats instead of simply reacting to them. One that is willing to intervene before genocide becomes inevitable." Major Rivera added, "The current Galactic Council is a forum for discussion and trade negotiation. We are proposing something different, a galactic security organization with the authority and capability to act decisively against extinction-level threats. Under human leadership," noted Ambassador Creonal. "Under joint leadership," Vasquez corrected. "We would provide experience and advanced technology. You would provide legitimacy and local knowledge. Together, we could create a galaxy where aggressive species are identified and reformed before they become dangerous." "And if we refuse?" asked Delegate Yanara. "If we decide we do not want to become junior partners in a human-dominated security organization." Captain Vasquez was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her words carried no threat, only sadness. Then, you will face the next 17 coalition-level threats alone. You will watch civilizations burn while you debate response strategies. You will see billions die while you argue about sovereignty and non-interference. And humanity? Asked Creonal. What will you do if we refuse your partnership? We will continue as we have, Vasquez replied. We will protect what we can, save who we can, and intervene when we must. But without your cooperation, we will be forced to act more directly, more visibly. The age of subtle intervention will end. The implications hung in the air like a sword. The humans were offering partnership, but they were also making it clear that their protection of the galaxy would continue regardless. The only choice was whether other species would participate in that protection or simply be protected. Captain, said Ambassador Creonal finally, you are asking us to abandon 4 centuries of diplomatic tradition. You are asking us to accept the principle of preventive intervention. You are asking us to become something we have never been. I am asking you to survive, Vasquez replied. I am asking you to help us ensure that intelligence life has a future. In this galaxy, I am asking you to choose evolution over extinction. She stood up, indicating that the meeting was ending. Take time to consider our proposal. Discuss it with your governments. But remember, the threats we have identified will not wait for your decision. They are already moving toward their own great filter moments. When they fail that test, we will act with or without your approval. As the human delegation prepared to leave, Commander Chun left behind a small device. This contains detailed information about the 17 current threats, including timelines and intervention strategies. Study it carefully. You will need to understand what is coming. The aliens sat in stunned silence as the humans departed. Outside the windows, they could see the JÖRMUNGANDR preparing to leave the station. But they now knew it was not alone. Somewhere in the darkness of space, dozens or hundreds of human ships were patrolling, watching, waiting for the next threat to emerge, the galaxy they thought they knew. A place where diplomacy and trade could solve most problems was revealed to be an illusion. The real galaxy was full of predators and victims, threats and guardians, species struggling to survive their own violent natures. The humans had offered them a choice: join the guardians or remain among the protected. But as Ambassador Creonal studied the threat assessment data, she realized it was not really a choice at all. The alternative to human partnership was eventual extinction. The age of innocence was over. The age of hard choices had begun. 3 weeks had passed since the human revelation. The Galactic Council chambers were fuller than they had ever been. Every member species had sent their highest-ranking representatives. Some had traveled for days just to attend this meeting. The future of galactic civilization was about to be decided. Ambassador Creonal stood at the center of the Great Hall, holding a data tablet that contained the votes of 43 different species. The debate had been intense. Some governments had fallen. Others had split into factions. A few had threatened to leave the council entirely rather than accept human partnership, but in the end, reality had won over ideology. The vote is complete, Creonal announced to the assembly. 37 species vote to accept the human proposal for a joint galactic security organization. 4 species vote to reject the proposal. 2 species abstain. A murmur ran through the hall. The majority was clear, but it was not unanimous. The divisions would create problems for years to come. Admiral Zektar rose from his seat. Ambassador, what of the species that voted against the proposal? Do they remain in the council? They have chosen to maintain their current status, Creonal replied carefully. They will continue to participate in trade negotiations and cultural exchanges, but they will not be part of security operations. What she did not say, but everyone understood, was that the dissenting species would also not be protected by the new security organization. They would face future threats alone, relying only on their own defenses and whatever help the traditional council could provide. Captain Vasquez stood up in the observers section. Ambassador, humanity accepts the council's decision. We are honored to work with your species in protecting galactic peace. Captain, said Delegate Morthak, what happens now? How will this new organization function? Vasquez activated a holographic display that showed the proposed structure. The Galactic Security Council will have two divisions. The Intelligence Division will monitor threats throughout the galaxy. The Response Division will plan and execute interventions when necessary. Commander Chun stepped forward to provide details. Each member species will contribute personnel and resources according to their capabilities. Some of you excel at communication and translation. You will help us understand potential threats better. Others have advanced medical technology. You will assist with civilian evacuations and refugee care. Lieutenant Martinez added, the humans will provide strategic planning, advanced technology, and specialized intervention teams, but the decision to act will be made jointly by all member species. Will it? Asked Ambassador Crianel. Captain, you have demonstrated capabilities far beyond ours. In practice, will our voices truly matter in these decisions? It was Major Rivera who answered, Ambassador, we need your voices more than you realize. The human approach to threat assessment is effective but limited. We see patterns of aggression and expansion, but we sometimes miss cultural factors that could lead to peaceful solutions. Rivera activated new displays showing case studies from human interventions. In 6 of our previous operations, member species input could have led to better outcomes. The Veltar situation might have been resolved without biological warfare if we had understood their religious motivations better. The Kethmori relocation could have been less traumatic if we had consulted species familiar with their family structures. Dr. Zillanes' tentacles moved thoughtfully. You are saying that our different perspectives make the organization stronger? Exactly, Captain Vasquez confirmed. Humans are good at identifying threats and eliminating them. But we are not always good at finding alternatives to elimination. Your species have developed diplomatic solutions we never considered. Together we can save more lives with less violence. What about the current threats? Asked Delegate Yanara. You mentioned 17 coalition-level dangers approaching their crisis points. Do we act against them immediately? We act carefully, Vasquez replied. Each threat will be evaluated by joint teams, including both human analysts and specialists. From your species, we will look for peaceful solutions first, but if negotiation fails, we will be ready to intervene. Commander Chun activated a timeline showing the next 5 years. The Corvani Imperium will reach critical threat level within 18 months. The Vectar Collective is approximately 2 years from beginning large-scale attacks. The Nexhari dynasty may be ready to launch their expansion in as little as 6 months. 6 months, whispered Ambassador Crianel. That is very soon. Which is why we cannot waste time, Lieutenant Martinez said. Joint training missions begin immediately. Human advisors will work with your security forces to develop new tactics and technologies. Your diplomats will learn our threat assessment methods while teaching us your negotiation techniques. Major Rivera added, we are also establishing refugee processing centers on uninhabited worlds throughout the galaxy. If we have to relocate civilian populations, we want to be ready with proper facilities and support systems. And if the threatened species resist our interventions? Asked Admiral Zektar. Then we use the minimum force necessary to protect innocent lives, Captain Vasquez replied. But make no mistake, we will act. The time for allowing genocidal empires to grow unchecked is over. The next several hours were spent working out practical details. Which species would contribute ships to the joint fleet? How would command structures work during operations? What rules would govern the treatment of relocated populations? How would disputes between member species be resolved? It was complex, difficult work. But gradually, the framework of the new galactic order took shape. As the meeting neared its end, Ambassador Crianel asked the question that many were thinking, Captain, what if we fail? What if this organization cannot prevent the next coalition level threat? Captain Vasquez was quiet for a moment, considering her words carefully. Ambassador, failure is always possible. We may face enemies more clever or more dangerous than any we have encountered before. We may make mistakes that cost millions of lives. The universe is not a safe place, and there are no guarantees. She paused, looking around the great hall at the assembled representatives of dozens of different species. But I would rather fail while trying to build something better than succeed at maintaining a system that allows genocide to flourish. For 400 years, humans have carried the burden of galactic protection alone. Now finally, we have partners who understand that sometimes peace must be defended with strength. The formal vote to establish the Galactic Security Council was unanimous among the participating species. The organizational charter was signed by 37 different leaders. The first joint training exercises were scheduled to begin within days. But as the delegates began to leave the Great Hall, everyone knew that the real test was yet to come. Words on paper were easy. Actually working together to stop extinction-level threats would be much harder. Captain Vasquez lingered as the hall emptied, speaking quietly with her senior staff. "Captain," said Commander Chun, "do you think this will work? Can we really integrate their forces with ours?" "It has to work," Vasquez replied. "The alternative is too terrible to contemplate." Lieutenant Martinez looked at the threat assessment data on her tablet. "The Nexhari dynasty is moving faster than we predicted. They may reach critical threat level in 4 months instead of 6. "Then we will be ready in 4 months," Major Rivera said firmly. "The joint training programs will be accelerated. The refugee centers will be completed ahead of schedule. We will do whatever is necessary." Captain Vasquez walked to the great windows and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the JÖRMUNGANDR was waiting, along with dozens of other human ships, but now they would not be alone. Soon, ships from the member species would join them in their patrol routes. "Captain," said a voice behind her. She turned to see Ambassador Creanol approaching. "Ambassador, I thought you had left with the others." "I wanted to speak with you privately," Creanol said. "Captain, my people are afraid. They understand the necessity of what we are doing, but they are terrified of what we might become." Vasquez nodded. "They should be afraid. What we are asking them to do, to actively prevent threats instead of simply reacting to them, will change them." "It changed us. Into what?" "Into survivors," Vasquez replied. "Into guardians. Into a species that refuses to let the universe burn while we watch from the sidelines." Creanol joined her at the window. "And if we become too much like you? If we become so focused on preventing threats that we see enemies everywhere? Then you will have failed the same test the Coalition failed," Vasquez said honestly. "The difference is that we will be watching you too. If your species becomes a threat to galactic peace, we will act against you as well." The bluntness of the statement was shocking, but somehow also reassuring. The humans were not asking for blind trust or unlimited authority. They were proposing a system where everyone, including themselves, would be held accountable. "One more question, Captain," Creanol said. "How many human ships are really out there? How large is your fleet?" Vasquez smiled, but it was not a happy expression. "Ambassador, I told you before, enough. More than enough. But if this partnership works, if we can build a true galactic security organization, then perhaps someday we will not need so many." "You would reduce your fleet? Give up some of your power?" "Power is not the goal, Ambassador. Survival is. If we can create a galaxy where extinction-level threats are prevented before they mature, where aggressive species are reformed instead of destroyed, where peace is maintained through cooperation instead of fear. Vasquez paused. "Then yes, we would gladly reduce our presence. We never wanted to be the galaxy's police force. We became one because no one else would." As Ambassador Creanol left the station, she carried with her the weight of a momentous decision. Her species, along with 36 others, had chosen to join humanity in actively shaping the galaxy's future. They had traded the comfortable illusion of safety for the difficult reality of responsibility. Behind her, Captain Vasquez remained at the window, watching the stars. In a few hours, she would return to the JÖRMUNGANDR and resume her patrol duties. But now she would not be carrying the burden alone. Ships from dozens of different species would join the watch. The galaxy's protection would become a shared responsibility. The age of hidden guardians was ending. The age of cooperative security was beginning, but in the depths of space, beyond the reach of current sensors, new threats were already stirring. The Nexhari dynasty was preparing their expansion fleets. The Corvani Imperium was testing weapons of unimaginable power. The Vectar Collective was planning the enslavement of entire species. The newly formed Galactic Security Council would face its first test. The question was not whether threats would emerge, they always did. The question was whether the diverse species of the galaxy could learn to work together quickly enough to stop them. Captain Elena Vasquez looked out at the stars and whispered, a prayer to whatever forces govern the universe. Let us be enough. Let us be ready. Let us save what can be saved. In the darkness between stars, human ships continued their patient vigil, no longer alone in their watch over a galaxy that had finally chosen to defend itself.